Appraisals. It's so important to make sure that you understand the process, what an appraisal is, how do you get it, and when you need it. My name is Erin Price Emery, a local real estate agent.
And I'm Julie Tran, mortgage broker.
So Julie, let's talk about an appraisal. At what point, if you're a buyer and you're buying a contract or you're buying a home, at what point does the appraisal come into fact?
The appraisal will come in once you have an actual live offer and we've submitted your application to the lender. The lender generally will request for an appraisal. And why an appraisal is so important is because it confirms the price that you're purchasing. So for example, say you love your home, you're purchasing it and your value is a lot greater than what the market is expecting. The appraisal will confirm that that's the value of the home for the lender.
That's right. So let's have an example here where I've had this before. We put an offer on a home and the appraisal actually came in lower than the actual purchase price that my clients put an offer in. So now we had $1 million, for example, of our purchase price, but the appraisal actually came in a lot lower. So that happens.
Yes, absolutely. It does happen quite often because we do find that clients who make a higher offer want to, number one, win the bid if it's a bidding war, and just love the property and think it's worth a lot more. However, from a lender's perspective, we want to make sure that that value is comparable to the market value. So if your appraisal comes in lower than the actual purchase price, we take the lesser of the two. So if your purchase price is $1 million, and you purchased it for, if your purchase price is $900,000 and you purchased it for $1 million, the lender will actually use a $900,000 purchase price value instead, which means the buyer would have to come up with the difference of the two.
So a shortfall of $100,000 is a difference.
Correct.
So that's what the buyer would have to come up with. Okay. So another scenario that happens with an appraisal is sometimes they don't even send an actual appraiser to come into the property. Sometimes they'll have it where they'll just pull up the stats and the information. So why do you suppose that is? You know, if an appraiser comes to the property or just looks at the stats?
Sometimes that can happen when the lender is using something called an automated appraisal value system. So what that does is it goes into the system, it says, hey, we think this is a purchase price. It will automatically approve an appraisal value. And you typically see that when the values are less than $1 million. Anything over $1 million, we generally will need an appraisal because of the value. So sometimes if there's no appraisal, it could be number one, the system automatically generated an approved appraisal amount, or number two, they're doing a cash offer and the lenders don't need an appraisal, which is always nice.
Which that makes sense, yeah. So when you're writing an offer and you don't need the financing, you don't typically need it. But when you do need it, you get qualified with your mortgage broker or your bank. They get qualified to see what you're appraised for, but also the home itself needs to get appraised. So it's two distinct things as well.
Okay. Why don't I ask you a question, Erin?
Sure.
Some people confuse an appraisal and an inspection. What is the difference between the two?
Huge difference between an appraisal and an inspection. And also what the cost is if someone is going to list a home. It's very different. The retail price also versus the appraised price. So let's talk about the differences. The appraisal is somebody comes in from the bank or the lender. They come in, they evaluate the home. They give you what the home price is worth. Whereas you come in and you have an inspection tells you everything that's wrong with the house or the condo or the townhome. The lighting doesn't work, the electrical outlets, there's roof, maybe it's not up to date, maybe you have PVC piping, maybe you have something wrong in the walls, maybe you have a mold, maybe your vents don't work. All of these things take into account, which is a lot different. So when they appraise it, they actually don't see all of these little things that you may want to take money back from a purchase price because of all these defaults or these deficiencies. So an appraiser doesn't see that. They see the overall, the condition of the home, not the nitty gritty, but the condition of the home and the comparables by it, like around the area. Now, something to take note as well, the appraised price is also very different than the retail price. In a sense, right? Same with the BC tax assessment as well, which is also very different than a retail price of someone selling their home. So it's really important to make sure that you understand all of these differences. But coming back to appraisal, sometimes we've seen it where, let's say you put the purchase price in, you have your subjects, you have your, let's say 7 to 10 days, everything is good. You remove all these subjects. sometimes a lender will ask if you can, they still need to come into the property, even though you've removed your subjects and your contract is firm and binding. Now,
Yes.
why does that and how does that affect you and how does it happen?
Sometimes that can happen depending on the borrower themselves. So say they go in with a contract, you have, 5 business days if you're lucky to get your subjects removed. And if they have a backup offer, meaning like they have a way of actually purchasing the property without needing bank financing, sometimes they will forego the appraisal during those 5 business days. However, if they decide at a later date after the subject removal that they do want to get financing from the bank, then they might need an appraisal, which can happen, anytime from the date of subject removal to the completion date, which could be even a period of 30 days, if not more. So sometimes after the subject removal date, you will see a lender requesting for an appraisal, which can happen sometimes even with foreclosures. A lot of times foreclosures, you actually can't get into the property until after the sale is completed and the accepted offer is done. Then you can go into the property after because the sale has already been completed, the subjects have been removed, and then the lender will then request for an appraisal at that time. So there could be a couple reasons as to why that happens.
I see. And there's also a small case sometimes before you even put an offer, can you still maybe get a private appraisal to come in and appraise the property so you kind of have an idea if you even need to have 25% or maybe you need 35% because maybe it's an area that you may need a larger down payment?
Absolutely. So sometimes if if the selling agent allows for it, we will request for an appraisal up front because the client wants to make a cash offer. And by doing a cash offer, there are no subjects essentially. So they want to have an appraisal up front to make sure that the value comes into the same as what they're planning an offer as a cash offer, just as an extra measure to make sure that there's no surprises after they do an appraisal and if the value somehow becomes lower than what they're purchasing it for. So yes, absolutely, sometimes that will happen as well.
So Julie, here is another example that we've come across before. So an offer has been placed again, and the appraisal came in, and the buyers were just not happy with that amount that they came in as appraisal. What happens in that case?
Yes, that actually happens quite a bit. Sometimes the purchase price doesn't match what the comparables look like. And what can happen is that we can definitely dispute an appraisal. So how we dispute an appraisal is we basically look at the comparables that the appraiser has used. And if the realtor agent or the client thinks that there are better comparables to bump up the value, we definitely can dispute that by giving them the comparables that we think are more beneficial to use. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't, but definitely we can always dispute an appraisal value.
I see. Now, could you get 2 different also? So let's say instead of using that same appraiser, could you say we would like another appraisal but from a different bank, so a different company has hired a different person? Does that happen often?
It does, but generally we don't necessarily go that route, only because we don't know which appraisal is legit at that time if we're using 2 different appraisers. So generally we like to stick to one appraiser. And then if there's any kind of dispute, we would send them comparables to try to dispute the value.
Fantastic. So if anybody has any questions about the home buying process, what it looks like, how much you need for a down payment, and the process, the steps, and of course, questions about an appraisal, feel free to reach out. I'm with
Julie Tran from the West Mortgage Group.
And my name is Erin Price Emery, your local real estate expert with Oakwyn Realty. And feel free to ask any questions, leave some comments, and please don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks so much. See you later.
Bye.